Sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. Friedrich Nietzsche. We live in a time where everyone's talking, but almost no one is truly heard. You scroll through endless smiles, filtered moments, short clips of confidence. Yet underneath it all, there's a quiet ache. People feel invisible, not because they're unworthy, but because they've been forced to wear masks so long they've forgotten the shape of their real face. You feel it, that disconnect between what people show and who they are. The confusion when someone acts warm but drains you. The frustration when you sense something's off but can't explain it in words. You start wondering, why can't I tell what people really mean anymore? Why do I fall for charm and miss the warning signs? Why do I give trust to the wrong people and guard myself from the right ones? This isn't weakness. It's the cost of living in a culture obsessed with image but starving for depth. Here's the truth. Being able to read people instantly isn't about manipulation. It's not about playing psychological games or decoding others like they're puzzles. It's about protection. It's about empathy. It's about healing. Because when you start to see people as they are, not who they pretend to be, something changes. Your anxiety lowers. Your boundaries sharpen. Your relationships deepen. And most importantly, you stop abandoning your instincts just to feel liked. This is what Friedrich Nietzsche understood long before psychology had a name. He looked at human nature not through politeness, but through brutal honesty. And in this video, I'm not here to give you shallow tips or gimmicks. I'm here to help you reconnect with your deepest human ability, the power to see people clearly, immediately, intuitively, because the ability to read people isn't some clever party trick. It's the beginning of freedom. Why it matters in today's world. The ability to read people has never been more important than it is right now. Because the world we live in, despite all its progress, its speed, its algorithms, is slowly breaking people apart in a quiet, invisible way. We're in the middle of what scientists are calling a loneliness epidemic. According to a recent study by the U.S. Surgeon General, 1 in 2 adults in America reports measurable feelings of loneliness. Not just being alone, but feeling unknown, unseen, unfelt. And yet we're constantly connected. We comment, we react, we swipe, we heart. But so many of those interactions are built on performance, not presence. Psychologists call this emotional blindness. It's what happens when a person can no longer distinguish between genuine connection and social camouflage. We're becoming experts at avoiding discomfort, but strangers to our own instincts. We smile through discomfort. We say we're fine when we're drowning. And we miss the real signals in others, the micro-expressions, the shifts in tone, the pauses between words that say more than the words themselves. Emotional intelligence, once considered a soft skill, is now being recognized as essential to mental health, leadership, parenting, relationships, and even physical well-being. Dr. Mark Brackett from Yale's Center for Emotional Intelligence found that people with high EQ aren't just more successful. They're more resilient, less anxious, and more capable of building lasting relationships. But here's what most people get wrong. Reading people is not about being clever. It's not about controlling others. It's not about profiling or predicting. It's about survival. It's about protecting your peace. It's about knowing who you're really talking to, so you can stop betraying your own gut just to keep the peace. Because when you know what to look for, when you know how to hear the emotions behind the words, you stop second-guessing your reality. You stop over-apologizing. You stop making excuses for people who keep wounding you. All because they know how to smile while doing it. This is the power Nietzsche offered us. The courage to strip away the performance and look into the raw human core, ours and others. He believed that truth, even when it's uncomfortable, is the only real source of clarity. And that emotional blindness isn't just ignorance. It's danger. The truth is, most people you meet are not showing you who they are. They're showing you who they think you'll accept. Their personality is not always their truth. Sometimes it's a defense mechanism that's been practiced for years. And this is where Nietzsche becomes powerful, not as a philosopher, but as a deep reader of human nature. He didn't care about social rules or being liked. He cared about what was real. And if you're someone who wants to stop being fooled, manipulated, or misunderstood, psychological truths will change the way you see people forever. 1. People lie most with silence. Often paraphrased from Nietzsche's deeper explorations of human avoidance and moral denial. Most of us think lying is something that happens with words, a twisted sentence, a false excuse, a cover-up. But the most dangerous lies are the ones told in silence. You know it. You've felt it. When someone sees your pain and says nothing. When they witness injustice and turn away. When they know the truth, but choose to leave you drowning in confusion. That's not just avoidance. That's a form of dishonesty. One that leaves deeper scars than spoken betrayal. Because when someone speaks a lie, at least you know where they stand. But when someone goes silent, they leave you alone with a storm of self-doubt. Silence can be a weapon. It gaslights. It manipulates. It creates a false reality where you start questioning your own instincts. Think of the parent who refuses to acknowledge abuse in the home. The friend who disappears when your world is collapsing. The partner who won't admit what you both know is true. These silences scream, and they leave wounds you can't show anyone. Dr. Gabor Mate said, "The greatest stress on the human organism is not trauma itself. It's the silence that follows it. Because humans are wired for connection. When someone denies you truth or presence, they don't just protect themselves. They deny you the reality you deserve. And the worst part? People often use silence to look good. They don't speak the truth, so they can say they didn't lie. But absence in moments of truth is a lie. And deep down, you felt that pain. Start noticing what people choose not to say. Not just in arguments, in relationships, at work, in your family. Who avoids hard truths? Who refuses to validate your reality? Those silences are not empty. They're loaded with meaning. And in your own life, ask yourself gently, what truths am I silencing to keep the peace? Because peace that demands your silence is not peace. It's emotional imprisonment. 2. Invisible threads are the strongest ties. You don't need to speak to someone every day to feel bound to them. You don't need closure to carry someone with you. And you definitely don't need love to feel stuck in someone's emotional grip. We're told that connections are made through time, conversation, shared experiences. But Nietzsche saw a deeper, more painful truth. Some of the strongest attachments we have are wordless, unresolved, and invisible. Have you ever noticed how someone who hurt you years ago still shows up in your dreams? Or how your body tightens at the mere sound of a name, even when your brain tells you it's over? That's not weakness. That's a thread. Invisible threads form when something was left unsaid. Something was denied but never resolved. You gave a piece of yourself and never got it back. Or someone left and you never understood why. These threads are made of emotional energy. And emotions that have nowhere to go don't disappear. They settle into the nervous system. They show up in your reactions, your trust issues, your avoidance. Maybe that's why you still can't fully connect with your partner, because part of your heart is still tangled in a past attachment. Maybe that's why you stay silent around certain people, because the thread tells you it's not safe to be seen. Maybe that's why you're drained after a 5-minute conversation with someone you no longer love, because that invisible thread still pulls energy from you. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." These threads are exactly that, unconscious pulls. You don't choose them until you see them. And once you name them, you begin to loosen them. But here's what makes this so complicated. Invisible threads aren't always negative. Sometimes, they're born from deep love that never had its time. From grief that wasn't allowed to speak. From loyalty that was betrayed, but never unloved. This is why people go back to toxic partners. Why they obsess over ex-friends. Why they feel strangely tied to a narcissistic parent, even as they try to set boundaries. Because the emotional contract was never closed. Start asking yourself, who am I emotionally tied to, even if they're not in my life anymore? What conversations did I never have that still echo inside me? What truth did I silence, just to hold on to a connection that already broke? Because once you identify the thread, you can start releasing it. Not by force, but by finally telling the truth to yourself about what happened, what it cost you, and what you deserve to feel now. And when you start cutting threads that no longer serve your soul, you begin to feel something rare in today's world: emotional clarity. 3. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. Life will hit every one of us hard, sooner or later, and not just once. A diagnosis, a betrayal, a loss that cracks your foundation, a sudden moment when everything you counted on stops making sense, and you find yourself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering, how am I supposed to keep going? Nietzsche wasn't being poetic here. He was being brutally real. He wasn't talking about some shallow idea of motivation. He was describing the deepest truth behind human strength. If you have a reason, a purpose, a why, you can survive almost anything. It's not the pain that breaks people. It's the absence of meaning in the pain. It's feeling like you're suffering for nothing. Let me say that again. People don't crumble because of pain. They crumble when their pain feels pointless. A single mother doesn't wake up every morning, go to work, come home to cook, clean, and hold it together because it's easy. She does it because her why is her children. They give her pain a direction. They make the struggle mean something. A person going through cancer treatment doesn't fight just because they want to live. They fight because they want to live for someone. Their spouse, their kids, their unfinished story. A man growing up in poverty who builds something from nothing. He isn't stronger by birth. He just had a reason that burned hot enough to carry him through things others couldn't imagine. The power of a why is backed by science too. In his book Man's Search for Meaning, Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl expanded on this exact truth. He observed people who survived Auschwitz, not the strongest physically, but those who held on to meaning, a future, a dream, a loved one, a reason. Frankl wrote, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." This wasn't philosophy to him. It was the reason he lived. But here's the deeper truth for you. If someone you know is numb, depressed, withdrawn, or self-destructing, the first question isn't, "What's wrong with you?" It's, "What purpose did you lose?" Because when people lose their why, they don't just become lost. They become unrecognizable. They stop caring. Not because they're lazy or broken, but because life without meaning is unbearable. And maybe that's you too. Maybe part of you doesn't know why you're doing any of this anymore. The job, the relationship, the routine. Feels like you're surviving, but not really living. Ask yourself, what part of my life used to feel meaningful? And when did that start to fade? What am I doing out of survival instead of purpose? A who or what gives me a sense that my pain might lead somewhere worth going? Because once you reclaim your why, you don't just survive, you start moving again with clarity. Even if the road is still hard. Even if the pain is still there. Because now that pain leads somewhere. And that changes everything. No one lies so boldly as the man who is indignant. Have you ever noticed how sometimes the loudest protesters, the ones who shout the hardest that they're right, are often the ones hiding the deepest doubts? Indignation, that fierce, burning anger, often masks a secret fear. It's a shield, a fortress built to protect something fragile inside. When someone is indignant, they aren't just angry at the world. They're furious at the idea that they could be wrong, at the possibility that their carefully constructed self-image might crack. This is more than just stubbornness. This is a psychological survival strategy. Think about it. Admitting you're wrong means vulnerability. It means admitting fault, failure, or a deeper truth you might not be ready to face. So instead, the mind doubles down, creates stories, it blusters with certainty, it deflects. It lies, not always consciously, to guard a fragile sense of self. Consider this. A partner denies any fault in an argument, but their indignation is so loud it drowns out the whole conversation. They aren't just defending their point, they're defending their identity. To admit fault would be to admit, "I'm not the person I thought I was." Or think of a colleague fiercely denying any responsibility for a project failure, lashing out at those who question them. That anger is a mask for fear of judgment, failure, or shame. Famous psychologist Carl Rogers emphasized this idea when he talked about the need to protect the self-concept. He said, "The greatest barrier to change is not resistance. It is the defense of self, often unconscious, but fierce and absolute." Indignation isn't just emotional noise. It's a deeply rooted defense. A loud no to reality that doesn't fit their narrative. And the tragedy? This loud lying through indignation not only deceives others but often deceives the person themselves. They start believing their own story, and that's when bridges burn, connections fracture, truth becomes impossible to reach. When you face someone who is indignant, pause. See beyond the anger. Recognize that their loudness is likely hiding fear, insecurity, or shame. Meet that with empathy, not escalation. And within yourself, ask, where am I holding onto indignation? What truth am I afraid to face? Is my anger protecting me or keeping me stuck? Because real growth begins the moment you stop lying to yourself through outrage. The moment you soften that fierce no. And the moment you face the truth, even when it hurts. This truth reminds us, indignation is a mask, a loud, bold lie, and beneath it lies the tender place where healing begins. 5. People don't want the truth, they want reassurance. This one is a mirror to so many of our struggles, in relationships, at work, even within ourselves. Truth isn't always comfortable. It's sharp, sometimes cold, and often uncomfortable. Truth demands courage. It asks us to face things we might rather run from. But what do most people seek instead? Reassurance. They want to hear that things are okay, even if they're not. They want comfort, validation, someone to tell them it's going to be all right, even when the facts say otherwise. Think about it. How many times have you stayed silent instead of speaking honestly, just to avoid rocking the boat? How often do we sugarcoat hard realities to keep peace or protect fragile egos? We want to be told, you're doing fine, even when deep down we know things need to change. Psychologist Brené Brown, who studies vulnerability and courage, reminds us that truth requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels risky. It's easier to seek reassurance than to face the raw edges of reality. This is why so many conversations circle around safe topics, or why difficult talks get postponed again and again, because truth can shake foundations, and reassurance feels like a soft place to land. In families, a parent may avoid telling a child hard truths to protect their innocence, but that silence can create confusion and mistrust later. At work, a manager might sugarcoat feedback to avoid confrontation, but the employee ends up stuck, unable to grow. Within ourselves, we tell ourselves comforting stories to avoid facing painful truths, blocking growth and healing. Here's what science tells us. Studies show that people with higher emotional intelligence don't just want reassurance. They want balanced honesty, truth with compassion. Because reassurance without truth is a band-aid, not a cure. Truth without reassurance is a blow. Practice giving and receiving truth with kindness. When you need to hear hard truths, ask for them gently, knowing they're the first step to real change. And when you deliver truths, wrap them in empathy so they don't break what you're trying to build. Remember, truth is not the enemy of connection. It's the foundation. Reassurance without truth is a fragile house of cards. But truth delivered with care is the strongest bridge. 6. What does not kill me makes me stronger. You've probably heard this 1,000 times, maybe as a mantra during tough moments, or as a motivational quote on social media. But what Nietzsche meant wasn't just about enduring pain or surviving hardship. It was about how hardship changes us, shapes us, and challenges us to grow in ways comfort never can. Life's toughest moments don't just test us. They break down old versions of ourselves. They strip away illusions and force us to confront our vulnerabilities. And in doing so, they create space. A space where something stronger, wiser, and more authentic can emerge. But here's the catch. Not every trauma or challenge automatically makes us stronger. Resilience is not a given. It's something we build, sometimes painfully. Psychologist Dr. George Bonanno's research on resilience shows that most people don't just bounce back by accident. They actively make meaning out of suffering. They find new purpose. They learn new ways to cope. Imagine a person who loses a job suddenly. They might initially feel crushed, defeated, maybe even hopeless. But if they find a why, a purpose or a new goal, that pain becomes a catalyst. They don't just survive, they reinvent themselves. Or think about someone who's been through a painful breakup. It's tempting to fall into despair or bitterness. But if they reflect, heal, and learn from the experience, they become emotionally stronger and more self-aware. This truth also connects to the words of Viktor Frankl, who taught us that suffering without meaning is torture, but suffering with meaning is transformation. Look at your struggles not as punishments, but as opportunities. Ask yourself, what lesson can this pain teach me? How can this hardship help me grow? What strength am I discovering inside myself right now? Because strength doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from engaging with it honestly, learning from it, and using it as fuel to become more whole. 7. To live is to suffer. To survive is to find meaning in the suffering. Suffering isn't a glitch in life. It's not an anomaly we can avoid if we try hard enough. It's the core of human existence. Every person you meet carries pain, visible or invisible. The heartbreaks, losses, disappointments, and fears are universal. They are part of what it means to be alive. But here's the difference between those who feel crushed by life and those who rise above it. It's meaning. You see, suffering without meaning can feel like endless darkness. It drains you, it numbs you, it breaks your spirit. But suffering that is given meaning transforms into a source of strength. It becomes a story of survival, a journey of growth. Psychologist Viktor Frankl, a survivor of unimaginable suffering, made this truth the foundation of his work. He observed that those who survived the horrors of the Holocaust were not the strongest or the luckiest. They were the ones who found meaning amid the pain. Frankl said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." Think about your own life for a moment. What suffering are you carrying right now? What pain feels unbearable? What losses weigh heavily on your heart? And now ask yourself, is there a way to hold this suffering so it teaches you something? Is there a meaning that can give you the strength to keep going? Maybe your pain is the seed of compassion for others who struggle. Maybe your hardships fuel a passion to change your life or help someone else. Maybe surviving your suffering means creating a new story, one where pain isn't the end, but a powerful beginning. The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly. Have you ever noticed how sometimes when you start growing, when you pursue new goals, change your mindset, or break free from old patterns, the people around you suddenly seem distant or even critical? That's not just your imagination. It's a deep psychological and social truth. When you begin to fly, to rise above your old limitations, you challenge the comfort zones of those still grounded. And when we feel threatened, what do we often do? We shrink down others. We minimize their achievements. We cast doubt. This is the loneliness of growth. Think about it. The friends who once cheered for you now question your choices. The family members who used to understand suddenly don't get your new dreams. Even you might feel isolated in your new mindset. Psychologist Jordan Peterson has spoken about this phenomenon, how growth and transformation can alienate us from our social circles. Because most people resist change, it threatens their sense of safety and identity. It's painful. It's confusing. It makes you question whether soaring was worth it at all. Remember the artist who leaves their small town to chase a bigger dream? They might be celebrated, but also misunderstood by those who never left. Or the person who breaks free from toxic relationships or harmful habits. They might lose people who prefer the old version of them. But here's the secret. Being smaller in the eyes of those who can't fly isn't a failure. It's proof you've moved into new territory, new growth. The higher you soar, the clearer your vision becomes. You see beyond the familiar. You connect with a deeper part of yourself. Don't be discouraged when others don't understand your journey. Their limited perspective isn't your reality. Honor your growth, even if it means feeling alone sometimes. Seek out others who are soaring, who uplift you, who understand the view from above. Because growth requires courage, but also the wisdom to keep flying even when others cannot. This truth reminds us, to rise is to risk loneliness. 9. Man is the cruelest animal. At first glance, this sounds like a harsh judgment, a bleak view of humanity. But Nietzsche wasn't condemning humans to eternal villainy. He was shining a light on something uncomfortable but real. Our capacity for cruelty is not some external flaw. It lives within us all, sometimes hidden beneath civility, reason, or kindness. Why? Because cruelty often emerges not just from malice, but from fear, insecurity, and the desperate attempt to control pain, our own or others. The harsh truth is, humans have the unique ability to inflict emotional pain, betrayal, and harm with intention. Unlike other animals, we don't just act on instinct, we strategize. We hold grudges. We manipulate. We hurt deeply, sometimes without remorse. This cruelty can take many forms. Silent treatment that wounds more than words. Betrayals that shatter trust. Judgments that isolate and diminish. Psychologist Gabor Mate points out that cruelty often masks profound wounds. People who hurt others are often themselves hurting inside, carrying trauma, shame, or fear. Think about how harsh self-criticism can be. How often do we become our own worst tormentors? This is a form of cruelty that's accepted socially, sometimes even glorified. Or consider social dynamics, bullying, exclusion, and cruelty in workplaces or schools that devastate lives. This truth calls for a hard but necessary reflection. The cruelty is part of us. How do we confront it? How do we choose compassion over cruelty when it's so easy to lash out? Recognize cruelty not just in others but in yourself as a signal, a call to healing. Where am I causing pain, knowingly or unknowingly? What wounds am I trying to protect or hide through cruelty? How can I replace cruelty with empathy, starting within? Because embracing this shadow side is the first step to breaking free from cycles of harm. It's uncomfortable but vital. Only by facing our capacity for cruelty can we begin to choose kindness. 10. He who fights with monsters should look to it that he does not become a monster. This is a warning, a mirror held up to anyone who has faced darkness, whether in others, society, or within themselves. When you confront evil, injustice, or cruelty, it's easy to think, I'm different, I'm fighting for good. But Nietzsche reminds us that the line between hero and monster is thin, fragile, and easy to cross. Why? Because the very act of fighting monsters requires adopting some of their tactics. Anger, ruthlessness, suspicion. You start to mirror their behavior, sometimes without realizing it. The fight for justice can turn into a fight for dominance. The pursuit of truth can become a pursuit of power. Psychologist Carl Jung spoke of this shadow self, the parts of us we hide, deny, or fear. He warned that ignoring our shadow can lead us to act in ways we never imagined, becoming the very thing we despise. Think about it. Have you ever found yourself getting harsh with someone you believe is wrong? Or justified doing something you once condemned because it serves a greater purpose? This is the slippery slope Nietzsche speaks of. This truth isn't just philosophical. It's deeply practical. In a world filled with conflict, social, political, personal, it's a daily challenge to fight without losing yourself, to stand firm without becoming what you stand against. Guard your integrity fiercely. When you fight for what's right, check in with yourself often. Are my actions aligned with my values? Am I allowing anger or hate to control me? Am I becoming the very thing I resist? Because the greatest victory is not just defeating monsters outside, but mastering the monsters within. This is a call to courage, not just to fight, but to fight wisely. Nietzsche never said life was easy. He said it was real, and reality, when faced bravely, can be a gift. If you want to read people instantly, you have to first read yourself. Not with judgment, but with radical compassion. And I'll leave you with this. We are unknown to ourselves, we men of knowledge, and with good reason. Nietzsche. There's so much more I want to share. But for now, what truth hit hardest for you? Drop it in the comments. And let me know. Should next video explore emotional manipulation, childhood imprinting, or healing narcissistic trauma. We go deeper from here, because the more you understand others, the less you fear them, and the less you fear, the more free you become.